I see you though.
All right, has the webinar started? It's recording. Okay, great. So we're going to start the joint meeting of the Tumwater City Council and Planning Commission, which is being held on Tuesday, December 12th. And so just as a reminder to everyone, we're limited on speakers. So if you're speaking in the room, please speak up so that we can do it. And if you are on in Zoom, if you're not able to hear, can you let us know? So hopefully that'll work. So that we get to know everyone, because we don't do these very often, I'm going to go around the room and have everyone introduce themselves, and if they're on the council or the planning commission. So we'll start with Eileen.
Lisa Worthout, Tumwater City Council.
Hi, Michael Althauser, Tumwater City Council.
Ray Kirkpatrick, Planning Commission.
Jack Ivers, Tumwater City Council.
I'm Lisa Parks, City Administrator.
Debbie Sullivan, Mayor.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Robbins, Tumwater Planning Commission.
Anthony Varela, Planning Commission.
Michael Tobias, Tumwater Planning Commission.
Erica Smith Erickson, Long Range Planner.
We have other staff at the table in the back. We will go ahead and go on Zoom. So we'll start with Lietta, and hopefully everybody sees it the same way I do. So.
Hi, everyone. Lietta. I'm on council.
Angela?
Angela Jefferson, position number 2, Tumwater City Council.
Sorry, I bet you everybody sees something different. So, Joan?
Yeah. Joan Cathy, City Council.
Great. And Grace?
Grace Edwards, Planning Commission.
And Brandon? You're on mute, I believe. I'm not hearing you. All right, thank you.
Sign language.
Yeah, sign language, that's great. So we will do that as roll call. Is there anyone I missed? Great, so we will move forward. I will now turn it over to Brad Mudrud, who will do the 2024 Long Range Planning Work Program. So go ahead, Brad.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today, members of the council and the commission. This is our annual opportunity for both the council and the commission to interact and talk about what has gone well in 23 and what we'll be doing in 24. I have a few slides here to sort of set the conversation, then I have a slide of questions that I would like to pose to everyone. So on an annual basis, the City Council approves a work program for a long-range planning department. Walk through what that looks like. As part of that process, the Planning Commission and the staff work together to put together a preliminary list. We've passed that by the City Administrator and the Mayor. And as part of the process, it goes through a formal approval process through a work sessions and finally next year on the consent calendar. The agenda for tonight is to focus first on what we've accomplished in 2023. We'll talk a little bit about the proposed 2024 work program, sort of high level. We'll touch on a little bit on the comprehensive plan update, which is going to be the majority of our work next year. And we'll also, again, as I mentioned, get into the City Council Planning Council discussion. For our 23 accomplishments, I'd like to first point out that Erica Smith Erickson joined us last year, for which we are very grateful because that doubled the size of our department. More importantly, she takes on a couple roles in the department explicitly. She's helping us also obviously on the land use side, but she's also our first designated housing plan, which is very important as the council has worked on it in 1998. Started working on housing and homelessness related issues, and we continue doing that to today. And Erica's role really is to sort of pull all those things together and move them forward. Related to that, biggest achievement, I guess, on the adopting ordinance this past year, the council adopted the rental registration ordinance, which established our first base level of rental registration in the city. We are currently coming through with our 2023 comprehensive plan amendments and our 2023 development code housekeeping amendments. We're having public hearings right after this meeting. So that process will be wrapping up. And thanks to the work for Erica as well, we have our hazard mitigation plan, should be ready for adoption early next year. That's important because that's a FEMA document that sort of pulls together everything the city does in terms of mitigating ahead of disaster. So earthquake preparedness, wildfires, and so forth. It's very important for a planning document and sort of pulling all the departments in the city together to identify mitigation measures and what things we should be doing. It is also a very important element for us to use for funding purposes. So I just want to call your attention to that. We have, I think this year more than any other year, a lot of things that are just sort of ongoing, that we haven't finished, that are just in process. First of all, the 2025 comprehensive plan and development code periodic update process, we started in earnest this past year. General Government Committee and the Planning Commission have been meeting regularly to go through our existing regulations and our existing comprehensive plan documents to get an understanding of where we are. Next year will be where are we going to go from here stage of the process, and we'll start that in late January. We also, just for your information as part of your packet, we included a snapshot of the community survey that we started last month. We've had postcards that went out on the 4th. We had a social media blitz shortly thereafter. Before we did all that, we had about over 300 responses. And I just encourage you to look through those. We are going to be using those to sort of inform our update and to look at areas of commonality that we need to reach out for discussion purposes. As some of you are aware, we're still working on the Bush Prairie Habitat Conservation Plan. That remains an important priority for the department. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has provided some detailed comments for us to address that we're really focusing on right now. We expect first quarter to go back to them with sort of an outline of how we're going to approach the project and hopefully have a public draft completed next year. Regional Housing Council, we have ongoing work with them. We're meeting with them tomorrow night. A lot of good things have happened through the Regional Housing Council this past year. As you are aware, the Franz Anderson project, you approved the interlocal agreement at your last meeting. That's really important. That's sort of the next stage beyond what's currently on that site for permanent supportive housing. The council's support for the Tumwater Inn project was very important to get that purchased and converted to senior housing. We're going to have a lot more similar opportunities coming up in 2024 that we'll be talking about with you early next year. Equity Toolbox, that's been an ongoing project that we're expecting to complete probably in the first half of 2024. As part of this project, we're focusing primarily on tools that we can use within the city for policy development and budget development. We will probably come to the full council with a full presentation on that probably February or March next year. For those of you who are wondering what happened to all those amendments we were working on for the urban forestry management plan, we will be coming back. We're coming back in March. I don't know what they're going to look like in March, but we're coming back in March. As you're probably aware, we have started work on the landscape, street tree and vegetation preservation ordinances. We had almost ready to present the ordinances to the Planning Commission, and the state dropped the wildland urban interface code on us. We've put a pause on that. We have met with the State Building Code Council as of last month. We actually got them to consider some changes. Now, we don't know exactly what the process will be now that they've agreed to consider changes, but these things are important because they're, first of all, determining where in the jurisdiction the code applies, and second of all, how we handle things like defensible space, which is the most important interlap with their other codes. So we're hoping to resolve these issues or get it far enough along to start everything up again in March and resolve this in 2024. Our proposed work program, again, according to the code, the City Council, Planning Commission, staff, and the general public can propose particular amendments at any time during the year. We take all those things and fold them into a working document that becomes ultimately the proposed work program. We have, for the 2024 work program, budgeted projects for about 3.1 FTEs. We're looking to hire a new senior planner next year. So if you know anybody who's like to work for the City of Tumwater, who's a planner, we'd be happy to join them. We have a space now. We're kicking Austin out, and we're going vertical. So we're looking forward to that. As I mentioned, over half of that time will be spent on the comprehensive plan update process. So you'll be hearing a lot about that in the coming year, because we're intending to schedule full meetings with the council work session and also planning commission together to talk through some of the bigger issues, primarily around climate and housing and probably a little bit of land use. In addition to that, the ongoing work that I mentioned about the Habitat Conservation Plan and Regional Housing Council will take about another quarter of our time. So that leaves a quarter of everybody else's time for all those other projects that we have, including their reporting. So, work session is an opportunity for the council and the commission to together discuss what we're proposing for the work program, and also talk about some general topics related to your roles as part of that process. What would work and what would be things that we should be looking at to make things work better. Work program document that I gave you has 4 parts. The first part is the comprehensive plan amendment docket. Second is development regulation docket, which is specific things that are changing in the development code. Other planning projects, which is everything else. And then general management coordination, which is all the meetings that we have, who we need to be coordinating with and talking to. Also included in your packet was something called the below the line projects. That is everything that we didn't find time for, but we know we need to eventually get to as part of the work program. The idea behind that is if we have time, or if the council or the commission decides that these have higher priority than the ones we listed above the line, we move things around and make adjustments. As I mentioned, about a quarter of all the budgeted time will just be for the comprehensive plan update process. That doesn't include the development code related stuff. Development code is the other part of that. We also have 2 other big initiatives on the development regulation side. We talked about here the forestry management plan amendments, but also we have other amendments that will be coming forward. Hopefully, the Thurston County Title 22 amendments will be worked on this year. They're in the process of wrapping up the joint planning process with Olympia and Lacey. Our expectation and hope is the staff will be directed to spend their time now on updating a code that hasn't been updated since 1995. Why is that important? Well, everything that happens in our county UGA right now is to those particular development codes. They're not in line with our development codes, all those changes that have occurred since that time. And when the expectation is in those urban growth areas that we eventually annex those areas, we want to ensure that new development is as close as possible to what city development should look like, so we don't have to sort of make up after. Other planning projects, I sort of talked through some of them. I just want to highlight the food system plan. We will be working on that next year at the council. We'll be finishing the hazard mitigation plan update. We have some ongoing things, managing our multifamily tax exemption program, code enforcement, plus current review support, public inquiries, and other items. The other items is the large black box of, we don't know what's going to happen, but we set aside time anyway to deal with those things. And so if anybody knows what's going to happen and would like to tell us before it happens, I'd appreciate it. On general management and coordination again, we are responsible for coordinating with the code compliance team, the traffic team, green team, stormwater team, GIS team, and a few other departments in the city. We also do a lot of general coordination with the jurisdictions, primarily the county and the city of Olympia. We set aside a special item here just for the Regional Housing Council. Just for your information, as part of the memorandum of understanding between the city and the other jurisdictions as part of the Regional Housing Council, we have to dedicate a quarter FTE to Regional Housing Council work. Our work with the other, with the Board of Olympia and so forth, department management and training. So I'd like to move into the suggested discussion topics. I hope you have an opportunity to look through the packet. Been familiar with the projects that have been ongoing for a bit, and some new things. But I wanted to first throw out the first question, which is, how is coordination between the City Council, Planning Commission gone in 2023, and what do you think can be improved in 2024?
Any comments?
Can you say the question again, please?
Sure. The question is, how has coordination between the city council and planning commission gone in 2023, and what can be improved in 2024?
Angela, did you have a question? If not, I see Leetta's hand is up. And then I'll go to Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess, could you remind me how many times we met with Planning Commission this year?
This will be the first one.
Right, so I think that says it all. I think there needs to be more crossover, more touch points, whatever that looks like. I think it's for this year, I know there's everything is going, right? I think waiting till December to have our first meeting is too late.
Okay, Michael?
So one of the things I was wondering is, do we keep track when we do, say, comprehensive plan amendments or other initiatives like that, from when the staff proposes them, comes to planning commission, we might discuss them, ask for clarification, staff might review and update the language. And then from planning commission, anything that comes from staff to planning commission that we then go on to city council, how often do we propose something from planning commission that then gets changed by the council? Are we keeping track at all, or metrics on which things like get proposed by the staff, approved by the planning commission, and approved by the city council without ever hitting any hitches, versus which initiatives or which policies, ordinances get changed along the way? And if so, if we could see that information of what's changing along the way, I think that could tell us a lot about where, we as the planning commission might be missing something, or maybe where the city council might have different priorities that the commission or the staff aren't as aware of in the drafting process. I think if we were able to see the data there too, I don't know what we would want that data to look like, but you kind of see what I'm saying?
So, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I think that there's different sort of tiers when we do have to make departures or tweaks or adjustments. I think in the past year, there's been like one or two, also, can I do a volume check? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think there's been one or two things where we've wordsmithed like a word here or there in the past 12 months, where I think that the legal substance of what we changed was not germane to the goal of the overarching thing. When we have made changes in the past that have significant departures, I think our common practice is to often refer it back to the Planning Commission for a second vetting, which has really only happened, I think, once in the past
Yeah, a couple of years.
4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's happened before, but it's pretty uncommon that would occur. But I can't remember a time where we made a significant departure without then referring it back. That's possible that could have happened. But I think the last time we met, one thing we talked about briefly was that if there is a difference of opinion between the two entities, that what we should do as a best practice is to refer it back as opposed to just making a change and adopting it outright. And I think that is a healthy practice and will be a very healthy practice for next year as we do these comp plan updates, because there's so much material that it seems almost impossible to me that we won't have differences of opinion in terms of what's the right phrasing or wording, or what the goal should be for X thing, or the strategy for whatever. So I think like that's probably a good practice, and maybe it's been an informal practice, but one that, like as chair of the General Government Committee, that's something that I think we should probably make sure that we do moving forward, so that we have that open line of communication, can also then have sort of a free exchange of ideas in that sense. And to Leetta, to your point, Leetta, maybe also for future joint meetings, I assume we're going to do joint meetings for the comp plan and stuff, and yeah, but prior to adoption, maybe if there is significant departures of opinion in various sections, we can have a meeting to sort of talk about those as a group. in terms of a committee of the whole, for next year.
Yes.
If I can kind of play on that a little bit and pose a question, I hope that doesn't disrupt. It's be sort of 1A, Brad, and that is, I'd like to hear, for that purpose of making sure we're well synced up, perhaps, what does success with the comp plan look like to council members?
I think Joan's hand is
Oh.
up. But I don't know if that's an answer to that question, which I'd be happy to jump in on, but I just spoke and I don't want to hog the mic either.
Joan, did you want to answer that question, or did you have a different one?
I had some different ones, but however we're going to answer this one kind of plays into it. So, Michael, wax eloquent. Here we go.
So I think that success could be measured in a variety of ways. We have talked about that to some degree at the General Government Committee. Leetta, I think you've been a really strong voice, and I've really appreciated your thoughts on public input and public interaction on the comp plan, so that our residents can and our neighbors can see each other and see the vision and the future of Tumwater in the comp plan. So I think public accessibility has been a big goal. We've talked a lot about simplifying the comp plan to make it more accessible. I think we might end up in a place where it's longer than before, which is fine. But I think one of the other things we talked about is like a resident's guide to the comp plan, so that not only is there this lengthy, detailed document, but then there's also other documents that have more brief summaries that then have a more accessible point of entree into what the comp plan is and does. For me, for the comp plan, I think my vision for success would be like, if you look at our vision for what we want for the city as a whole, and then you read through the comp plan, all 1,500 or however many pages we land on, like that statement we have on the website that we adopt at the retreat that we do, that we'll probably look at in January and February, it's like, is that embodied by the comp plan in the elements, in the goals, and in the strategies? So if that theme is present throughout, I think that's successful. That's like one half of the coin. But then also, like, if the public can digest it and understand it, and if they agree with it too, that's the other thing is, I don't want to create something that, the city doesn't actually want, right? Like, so I don't know, those are a few things that come to mind to me, but I'm also very interested in what other folks have to say too.
Joan, I'll go to you, and then I'll see if anyone else wants to. And then I'll go to Angela.
Okay, thank you. I think Michael touched on a couple of the things that I'm trying to put into words to answer that question, and for helpfulness in us working together as two different groups, two different bodies. I think that the council needs to have clarity among the council, and we're going to have a new council member, and of what are our goals right now in 2024. What is it? Last time we got together 2 years ago, our goal was environment. Well, not sure we actually got there, but we worked on it. But what I want to say is that we, if we're going to say that one of our goals as a council is economic development, that needs to be reflected somewhere in the decisions that you as a planning commission and us as councilors, we need to see how that fits. What do we do? What do we emphasize? This urban zoning? Do we? We're working as two separate groups, and we're just kind of doing what the staff brings us. And we need to. What I want to know why you want to be on the, you don't have to answer this tonight. Why you want to be on the planning commission? What is it you want to bring to the city? What is really your interest in what you want. I obviously am passionate about some things, and I want them considered, and I want to coordinate that with the planning commission. And maybe there's a planning commissioner that wants to talk to me about a certain thing or something. I'm a newly elected person, and I have yet to have that conversation. And I'm going to be completing my 16th year in a couple weeks. So I would love to have us say, as a council and as a planning commission, here are some of the things that when we read what we need to do, the things that we've got on our list, who's really talking about that? Or how do we shape that? So both groups are working together, but have, passion in certain areas. So the other thing I wanted to ask is, when we put things in on paper here, and it came up a couple times, we use the word equity. Is that going back to what we've adopted as far as DEI is concerned? Or what do we mean when we use equity in our planning documents or so on and so forth? So, that's just a question I'd like to have answered, because is it going to affect then how we zone equity? Or is it, what does it do? Because we've had quite a bit of discussion at the council level about equity and about, the DEI and the things like that. So those are two things, and you can tell I'm not too passionate about them, but I just thought I'd bring them up. And I want to say that I appreciate what you're doing as planning commissioners. I think you're doing a very good job, and you're being thoughtful, and you're doing a lot of work for us, for this city. So thank you for serving on the planning commission. Other than a council position, you're reading a lot of stuff, just like us. So thank you.
So I'll go to Angela, and then I'll go to Terry Kirkpatrick.
Yes, as far as it, can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
As far as the improvements, what can the planning commission do better? But since I've been on the council, what I see is work is seamless. Communication is good, because we're not sending many items back, and things are just moving along like a well-oiled machine. So that also says something. You're doing the right things. We're listening to staff, and also staff is doing the right things. So I find that a plus. I don't feel too much negative towards with our group and working together. So that's a good thing. So planning commissioners, what would you require from the city council? Because I feel that we're listening. Are we listening? So I have lots of positives and not too many improvements. So things are going good to me. Thanks.
Terry.
Yes, I value the opportunity face to face, even through Zoom, to get together on occasion. But we have on our agenda for planning commission meetings a manager's report right up front. And if there's something that's been taking place, city council is germane to what we're working on here. We get it. Brad does an excellent job of laying out those things that are happening in your meetings for our benefit. In addition to that, we've got the strategic plan that you all have created. Whenever we get a staff report, we get a detailed list of how each one of those are met if they're germane to that particular topic. Those things do a tremendously good job of keeping us in the loop. I'm glad to hear that opinions that we express will be discussed at City Council, but the strategic plan is our guiding tool. Until you change it, that's really the direction that we're going.
Great, thanks, Terry. Leetta?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with everything that's been said. One of the things that when I was able to serve on Planning Commission and we had this opportunity for the comprehensive plan elements is one thing I would like you all to take the opportunity to do is you're forecasting like 10 years plus. You have an amazing opportunity to help shape our future. So I know not everyone has my natural disposition of pushing, but I would like you to push with staff of what you want to accomplish and see, right? Like just out of reach. I think low hanging fruit should be something we should already be doing, right? So I would like you when you're doing these elements to push, right? Because you got one shot in 10 years. So that's one thing I would do and that I would deem as success is pushing us forward. The other thing is I'm excited about, and general government has talked about this with Brad, is like some central location or in the cloud or wherever of these documents. Because I know not all of us have our great ideas in the limited time that we meet. So having that access for all of us to document and show comments for Brad and staff, I think would be helpful as well of those threads. So thank you.
Great. Yes, Michael?
So many of us are familiar with the saying that great minds think alike. The second half that's often forgotten of that saying is that great minds think alike, but fools seldom differ. If we're taking all the input from the staff and we say, you know, for the Planning Commission, this all looks good, let's send it on to the City Council. The City Council gets it and says, this all looks good, let's send it on, let's put it into the code. If we're agreeing 100% of the time with staff and City Council is agreeing 100% of the time with Planning Commission, are we doing the full due diligence that we need? So that's why I asked earlier about the, you know, looking at the discrepancies or ways things change. I think it could be useful to see that we have points of disagreement, not necessarily that says, you know, we are against each other, but more so to make sure that we're checking our work for each other and that everything kind of goes through, you know, really rigorous tests throughout the whole process. Because I think that is something to be on the lookout for is if we're correcting everything that, you know, if we're correcting everything the staff said or City Council's correcting everything the Planning Commission says, that's a problem. But if we're always agreeing with each other and we never have any pushback on it, like Leota said, you know, we gotta, you know, sometimes we have to be able to, you know, push the boundaries or the understanding of our limits in order to really get the full picture, so.
So I'm going to say this because I was on the Planning Commission for 10 years and Terry was actually on it also when I was there. So one of the things that happened when I was on there on a few occasions, because I know if you start agreeing too much, you think, geez, are we really having the right conversation? And I'm sure Terry remembers a few minority reports that also went to City Council when we could not agree. And so, but the majority went with the approval, but there was also a minority report attached to that. So that's always an option. So that individuals, if there's definitely, you know, like 3 of us don't agree, you know, didn't agree on something, we would write the minority report and why, what differences we brought to the table. And I'm sure Terry remembers those discussions because we've had it. That one year we had like 3 of them, if I'm not mistaken. It was very interesting. So yeah, so that's also an alternative to being able to do that. So the voice is heard, it's not lost, and the reasoning behind it is documented. So just as a reminder, the Planning Commission meeting is scheduled to start at 7, but I have a very sneaking suspicion that they're not going to hit that timeline. So Brad, did you want to go ahead and go through the other questions? Because I think we have 5 more.
Yeah, I think we're making good.
For this particular presentation, we have another one coming, so.
Yeah. Just very quickly, what went well in the last year's work program, and what could be improved? This is focusing more on what the work that was being done rather than
Any comments that might vary from what we've already discussed? I'm not seeing any.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that one thing that I appreciate is that when we have, I just appreciate the existence of a work program coming from my day job in the legislature where that changes like all the time. And so I think we did a good job of establishing a list of what's accomplishable in the calendar year and checking most of those boxes for specific items within those things. There's some things that obviously we didn't get to and won't get to until next year, but I always appreciate that we have sort of set realistic expectations at the beginning of the year for what is achievable with the resources we've allocated to try to achieve that. So I think it's good from that sense for not having a work program where if it was vastly more ambitious and then we did not achieve those things, and that sends a message to the public that we don't totally understand how much time that takes. But looking at the things that we had on there at the beginning of the year and what we were able to accomplish, I think it's a pretty impressive list, even though there are some boxes that we weren't able to do this year that are on our list to continue or to accomplish next year. See, Joan has her hand.
Okay, Joan?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say, and kind of along with what Michael is saying, I would encourage the Planning Commission also to look below the line and see what is there. And if it hits something that you think and you've been thinking about, or I think you should bring it up. I've pushed on some things over the years that I thought spent too much time below the line. And so don't stop there. Look at those and don't be afraid to bring up things out of your own years on planning or living in Tumwater or what you're hearing out in the community. We can help each other out here with, maybe something different. Maybe we're not explaining something we're trying to do well or something. So I would like to see more, interaction like that, or the Planning Commission to feel that they can get involved that way in this process and feel like we're together. So,
Great.
below the line, folks.
Are we ready to move to the next question? Okay.
So building on the question that, or the statement that Councilmember Dahlhoff brought up about additional opportunities for collaboration, the staff is going to propose a few network sessions to deal with specific topics dealing with the comprehensive plan update. Are there any other things that you think are worthy of having that kind of level of collaboration that we're not thinking about now?
Brandon, I see your picture pop up. Are you, I'm not sure if you're able to speak. You're good? Okay. Councilmember Dahlhoff.
Thank you, Mayor. Brad, I can sometimes, depending on where your face is pointed, I can hear you or not. So I don't know if you said like a community forum. We didn't do one this year, so I'd like to do one next year. And I think that falls into the comprehensive plan. So I'd love Planning Commission to be a part of that. If that community engagement, inclusion, belonging, I think we should do it with Planning Commission as well, and open up to the other commissions as well. I think that'd be a good temperature check.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move to the next question.
I just wanted to say, anytime we do, building off of what Leetta just said, anytime we do a community, forum or talk about something in the city, shouldn't it just be that the Planning Commission is always encouraged to be there? I think that, not feeling like you have to be invited each time, if we could just sort of make it like, when we're talking about anything that has to do with the city and with development or with anything, I think the input and the learning that happens with when we're in community conversation is really important. So I'd like to put that out there.
Okay, next question.
I just wanted to confirm with the city council members, what are the main priorities that you have on 2024 workload? We laid out our proposal, we had a discussion with the planning commission, but if there's anything that's missing or additional items, what are you really needing us to complete, I guess?
Boy, that sounds like a big question. I mean, that sounds like a huge question. So in addition to what we do at our strategic planning meeting that will have in February, something,
Anything, are we not showing something on our work program that is a priority for the city council?
okay.
That would be within our remit?
Yeah, Leetta?
Thank you, Mayor. So I agree, when the mayor was saying that, I was like, yeah, we haven't had our retreat, so it's the challenge of looking at this, but then we haven't retreat. So I started a list. So Brad, I'm gonna email that to you so you get a heads up. So I think part of this, like overarching, I don't have heartburn, right? So it's a good day. Maybe we could add in the project description some keywords, right? Like a hierarchy or elements, right? Overall, I agree with it, but there's some things that I was like, I don't know yet. So I'm just gonna email you my sheet. And then I think there might be modifications or edits because we haven't had the retreats yet.
I want to agree with that, Brad. I have my list forming things for, for the retreat. And I think overall what we've talked about here tonight is okay. Like Leah, I don't have any, just nothing's making me jump out of my chair or anything at this point. But I do have some things that could impact this or make me more excited about something. So I think we've got these things reversed. I think we'd have more answers to your questions and to these questions after the retreat.
Councilmember Eileen, go ahead.
One of the things I'm aware of is that the laser focus will be on us when it comes to climate. We know already from the from the community what that'll look like. So I think that's one of the ones that's definitely an area that would be a very important piece of the comp plan. So I'm very And then I guess I'm concerned too is when we're looking at budgeting is that right now the person that we have is doing water sustainability and climate. And so the other jurisdictions are able to fund a full-time climate person. And so to see what perhaps look at that, I would like to ask for when we were looking at the budget to see about expanding that her role and having her be full-time climate, and then see what we could do about the sustainability piece of it.
Go ahead, Peter.
So, a while ago, 2 weeks ago, we told the citizens of Tumwater about the park ordinance amendment that we were going to get back to them in January.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't that be a priority as we enter the new year, how we are going to deal with that? Because if I'm a citizen, if you had told me that, well, we'll do this in January, and here is February, and I haven't had anything, then I'm thinking we just got ghosted.
Are you talking about the park ordinance that we?
Yes.
Oh, that's separate than this, and we
Okay.
will, and that will be coming back.
Okay, all right, so, how, I guess for my benefit, I like to know, for educated, how is that going to come back? Is it just something we just put back on the calendar?
Yeah, we will have a discussion in January. Yeah, it's slated on this calendar. We have not finished that calendar yet, so it's on the agenda for January.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Michael.
One thing in here that I don't think is discussed that deeply in some of the parks and open space elements specifically is the long-range plan for the golf course. I don't know if that's really inside the scope of looking at that right now, but if I'm looking at that property, which will be paid off in the next 2-ish years, I think, and having a community conversation about the use of that land in the future, whether that's to continue it as a golf course or what have you. I think that warrants a public discussion at some point in time, probably down the road after that property is paid off, to talk about that further. But that strikes me as something that we've just sort of been operating kind of status quo for a long time. And this also kind of fits into our economic development strategy of like, this is going to be the main attraction to bring people into our city for new business in the forthcoming future. So I think having a discussion about the golf course at some point in the future makes sense.
So just for clarification, outside of what the Parks Board is doing, and
Is the Parks Board doing something about the golf course?
no, I meant, isn't that part of Parks and Rec?
Right, but we do have an element within our comp plan
Okay.
dedicated to parks and
Right.
spaces.
Councilmember Kathy.
I'm trying to stay calm about what Michael just said.
I knew that.
God, get rid of a golf course makes me shake. What,
That is not what I said. What I said was a public conversation
I
about
know,
the future of the
I know.
it's paid off.
I want to know what you have in your mind when you say down the road or in the future. Excuse me. You mean, so we're just mentioning it here tonight, we're not putting that in writing under future or below the line or anything?
Yeah.
Yes, which one?
That's something that I think we should have a future conversation about at some point, probably after we pay off the property.
And when is that?
I think in 2 years.
I don't remember. So, okay, because this brings up a topic that I want to put out there for both the council and definitely for the planning commission too, is that one of the challenges in this coming year, in the next 2 years or whatever, is for us to keep both things in mind when we're talking about economic development, is environment. These things have to be balanced. Eileen mentioned the climate. We are in a crisis. We wrote that down in our emergency we wrote down, and definitely it is a crisis emergency. And so this has to be balanced. The golf course is, in my mind, comes it comes under golf, but recreation, or like you say, drawing people here. But it's a big environmental issue, and a river runs through it and all of that. So when we're talking about making decisions as planners, planning commissioners and council for the future, we're not going to have one if we don't balance these things. And so I would like to see that in all of the decisions we make. How does this impact our environment, our climate, our trees, our critters, all of that kind of thing. So, in fact, and get prepared, Michael, if we're going to let you be the one to bring that up out loud, and you're going to have every birder from here to I don't know where after you. Those people who bird down there all the time.
Right, but they also have to pay green fees to bird, as opposed to if you had an enormous park that's free for everybody. But sorry, I'm going to step off the soapbox because this is way outside the scope of what we're talking about. But
well, not for me, because balancing economic development and the future of our city in these 10 years that Leah is talking about, if we want to have 10 years to do some of this, we have to balance things with climate and environment. So that's
Right.
my soapbox, and I never get off of it. So
No, I mean, I agree. Parks are
Yeah.
statistically better economic drivers than golf courses, though. So if that's the goal, then, sorry,
Am
I could keep.
You
So
just
why don't we
stepped
go
up,
to the last question?
you just stepped up to the next,
Go to the last question.
you just stepped up to the next level of your soapbox, buddy. Hey, is there nobody else in this conversation that plays golf except for me? Come on, folks.
Also, I do play golf, for the record, but
Councilmember Kathy, we will have the opportunity to consider, continuing this conversation tomorrow at 8 a.m.
You're trying to catch me when I'm not awake yet.
No, thank you. I appreciate the passion actually from, before I move on to the last question, I would like to address the concern from Councilmember Agavi. I think this is a great opportunity for us to be thinking about the next opportunity for us to staff to bring back to the council and the commission a status report on where we are with the housing action plan, where we are with the Regional Housing Council and our other homelessness programs. Because I think it's been a little while since we've had the conversation about the action plan going. So I think if you're looking for another topic for a joint work session, I think that's a great thing to be focusing on. The last question I want to talk about combines the last two there, is really if we need to make adjustments to the work program, what projects have less priority? And if you're missing any projects, what can be adjusted?
Any discussion, or is this something that we can come back to?
We'll have to circle back after the retreat.
Yeah. So Brad, keep these questions for our retreat. Because I think these will be good questions for us to ask.
So I just wanted to let you know the next steps. We do have a GDC briefing to follow up on this conversation. If the GDC thinks they want to have this discussion in January, and then we're looking for formal consent and approval of the work program on January 16th. We can always amend the work program. This is just to get us going.
Okay. All right. So with that, if everyone's ready, we can move to the 2025 Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update and Survey Snapshot, and Brad will present that.
Yeah, this is really just an item to include in your packet, so you have an item to review and just sort of a pulse taking of what kind of opinions we're receiving. There's nothing I'm presenting tonight that's not in the packet, but I wanted to make sure that you have the most current version of the survey documents going forward.
Great. Any questions about that?
When does the survey close for input?
We are coordinating that right now. I believe it'll be probably in January. But I need to pulse check to see how what's happened in the past week or so since we got the postcard out.
And is the feedback on track with the expectation as far as response rate?
It is far exceeding my expectations.
But they just very low?
Yeah, and I hate to say that, yes. Our previous attempts with the hazard mitigation plan, we had 7 responses. So if we beat 7, I would be ecstatic, but I wanted much more than that, and we're definitely getting it.
Awesome, good.
Who does? Yeah. So that background, I'm sorry, the background, the hand really fades into the background.
Oh,
so I'm sorry
my
if I missed it.
archaeological dig site, Mayor, you can't see my hand?
I'm sorry.
That was
I
for
missed
Ann,
your
that was for
hand,
Ann.
sorry. All right, Councilmember Rodolfo.
Thank you, Mayor. The one thing, I appreciate this, one thing that I realized was a trigger for me is a lot of average, and I don't consider Tumwater average, so that is concerning to me, but also good intel. The one thing I'm wondering as this progresses is what always strikes me, and I know council gets this a lot, but would like planning commission to think about, and I love staff's response is when you get feedback, one said more housing, one says less housing. It's literally the diametrically opposite answer, right? But it's like telling us what they want and don't want, but it's all conflicting. So moving forward, how are you going to aggregate that data so we can see it? Because every time you just read a line, it's it's hard to keep track of the consensus and like the weight. So I'm wondering, as we move forward, how are you going to aggregate that to show us? And how do we handle all the conflicting information?
I don't know, and we will need to figure that out. I anticipate, and I'm not being flippant there, because you're right.
No, I get it.
When you ask for opinions, you'll get them. Now, not necessarily in a neat way that's categorical into, 12 said yes and 6 said no. But yes, we'll work on a way to try to make sure that we present this in a shorter format that is a little bit more digestible. How we resolve those particular differences or something else.
Michael?
So in the responses, the percentage of renters is extremely low compared to the data that we know. Like, I think that we're not majority renter, but we're close. I think we're like 45, 40? Yeah. And the respondents are only like 6 or 7% renters. Is that a symptom of the methodology because we're sending postcards in the water bill, or?
It's a function of who responds to the survey rather than, say, the survey reaching out to a particular group.
Yeah.
And trying to achieve that. So that's an inherent problem with the survey method. At the same time, it was the most efficient way for us to do this. So we'll need to take into account that we're missing. We'll have to do additional outreach to get at the renters, to get at those age groups, especially the under 40s that aren't responding and so forth. So, we'll have to take into account those biases.
So when the survey is concluded, do we weight score any of these things so that the demographics of a given response, when we know what the demographics are for a particular population, do we weight those things at all to account for that? Or does that kind of go beyond the statistical expertise that we have signed up for and contracted for?
It probably is beyond the stat, but we will attempt to try to quantify that. So at least you'll have an idea. Here's the percentage breakdown of the African community according to the census. Here's the response in terms of the survey documents that we've got. Trying to figure out how that will work. Both in terms of neighborhoods, age.
Thanks.
Michael?
I do think, just harkening back to one of the earlier questions about areas of prioritization, it's also good to keep in mind of, do we measure sort of the immediate impact of certain projects or items that are on the comprehensive plan amendments? I'm thinking, for example, City Council member Kathy mentioned the importance of, dealing with the environmental catastrophe that our city and cities around the world are faced with, which is, an area that you can measure as high impact and high importance, but you won't necessarily see immediate changes in the near future. That's, something that you have to build up towards the long term. What about for things though, say like capital facilities plan, when it comes to if we're updating the stormwater or sewer system of the city? That's something that also is important, but you have the physical impact of being able to tell, okay, there's a new stormwater drainage system that keeps the retention ponds from overflowing. There's new roundabouts that are making the streets safer. So I think it's good to I don't know if we have a rubric or some kind of way to measure sort of high priority, high impact items and ones that have immediate resolution or versus long-term solutions. Because we don't want to get bogged down. For example, we talk a lot about, how we update our zoning, more missing middle housing, more accessory dwelling, zoning for things like accessory dwelling unit or higher density housing. But if we can make those changes, but we might not see actual housing move in for, years at a time. But if we do something that invests in capital facilities, we can see more immediate impacts. But we don't want to get so focused on only repairing the roads and the pipes that we lose sight of the overall priorities. So just saying that I think we need to, find a way to measure the immediate impact and overall impact of projects we're looking at.
that reminds me when we passed the multifamily housing plan, or
The taxing.
tax exempt. And so at the time when we passed it, you know, nobody was building anything in Tumwater, and so especially not apartments. And we weren't getting the housing, and everybody kept saying, oh, it doesn't pencil out, it doesn't pencil out. So now we're getting them, and it would, so it'd be, what I'd like to see is just interested in the ones that have actually been built and that use that plan, and then how many units. So we can see the cost and benefits of that. Because I would like to know, you know, how much did it really cost the city, as far as tax revenue? Because I remember when we talked with John, it wasn't gonna be, you know, like a gazillion dollars, but just see the benefit of this, because we've had people, you know, we are gonna, look at it again. We've agreed, we've had some citizens that have been looking at that. But also just to be able to have the numbers to be able to, because we passed that years ago, and to see how that has been put in place and the cost and benefit to the city.
Yeah, a lot of these things take an enormous amount of time, because I remember when we did the Capitol Boulevard and the Brewery District revisioning, and I'm thinking, what was that, like 10, 11 years ago, probably? And we did the roundabout on Trosper and Capitol. That was like planned like 10, 11 years ago. And people go, why didn't you tell us that was happening? And it's like, but it's been in the works for like 10 years, 11 years, you know. So until the shovel hits the ground, sometimes people don't even know, because they're not paying that much of attention, because it's not affecting their life. But as soon as the shovel hits the ground, then everybody pays attention. So, yeah, wait until we get more roundabouts on Capitol Boulevard and, yeah.
Can't wait. My inbox can't wait.
So, yeah, so it's those things that, you know, I start measuring things. That happened when I was on planning commission, and then this happened when I was originally on council, and, you know, so it's a long journey sometimes to get those things there. Any other questions or comments? We're intruding into planning commission time, which I think is fine, so. Any other questions? Comments? So also, I'll just remind everyone that this is an ongoing process, and so it's not written in stone, and we will be moving forward with a lot of different aspects of this. This is a huge lift to do, so. So with that, we'll go to Mayor City Administrator report, and you don't have anything. I just want to say that, reminder, we do not have a council meeting next week, and we do not have a work session the following week. So we have, for the rest of the year, this is our last council work session or meeting for the rest of the year, except I think you guys have one more meeting tomorrow. And so I just want everyone to enjoy the holidays, and thanks everyone for participating. I really enjoy having this joint meeting, and I agree, we should probably do this more often when it is appropriate to do it, just not to drag everybody together, but to really have because I think it gives us everybody insight and gets us all understanding where we all want to go, so. Anything else? Councilmember Kathy?
Yes, it was hard to hear some of what Peter was asking you about the homelessness and houselessness in parks.
Oh, it was that ordinance that we pulled off the consent agenda item before that. It was that. So we will be dealing with that. That's separate than this.
I realize that, but this is our last meeting, and I'm wondering, is that scheduled? Is it going to?
For January.
It's going to be for sure.
We'll have the discussion in January. So we're going to have a discussion about this in January.
With the community that we promised the night that we talked about it?
We will have a discussion as council how we're going to approach it, and then the community involvement. So we'll have more discussion on this in January.
Okay, so we can tell the people who are still asking about it that it will be at a council.
We'll have more. Yeah.
It'll be a council meeting.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, it came to my mind, you're announcing that we aren't gonna meet anymore for the rest of the year, and there are still people out there asking questions about the, the Parks Amendment thing.
Right.
And so I just want to have I just want to be telling, the correct information and say to the people that are still asking me anyway,
Right.
that it's going
So
to
we
be,
told them we told them it would be after the first of the year. We would be discussing that, and then we will figure out the program, how we do community outreach. We've got a long list of individuals who've contacted us, so we will continue, but we will start that discussion after January, in January.
so just one more thing to be clear. If I say to someone, this will be discussed at a council meeting in January, I will be correct. Oh,
Yes, and also so we'll get you the schedule. So why don't we get you the schedule of what you can say, because there's going to be, it's not just going to be a meeting, this will be more than one meeting. So
okay.
there will be more input for the community in a multitude of ways.
But we're first having a work session.
Right.
Councilmember Kathy, you said a council meeting,
But it'll be a
not
work
at a council meeting, at a work session.
session.
So if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So, Councilmember Kathy, staff is working on trying to put together, accurate information to convey to the many people that have commented. We're going to make a recommendation in terms of the timing and the methodology for getting that information out, and making sure that we have an opportunity for people to speak their mind and convey information back to you. And then we'll have a recommended strategy for, and alternatives for the council to consider with regard to what to actually do with the ordinance. And so we're going to be talking to you about that in January at your meetings. So I think it would be accurate and fair to say to the community that we are going to be actively working on this topic in January and February, and likely, and you could say the first quarter of 2024, it is going to be on the agendas, work sessions, work sessions, city council meetings. But at this point in time, we're trying to come up with a comprehensive, well-informed strategy that we will outline for the community moving forward.
Well,
Just one more thing. I think recognizing, one of the criticisms is that we were, it was quite unintentional, but one of the criticisms is that we were trying to do this right before the Thanksgiving holiday. It doesn't make a lot of sense for us to try and do something on this topic any point in time from here to the end of the year as people are enjoying the holidays. So the accurate response to people who are asking is to let them know that we are actively working on a strategy to ensure that we are following through with the commitment that we made to have a community conversation and to bring it back to the city council for consideration at a future date in early 2024.
well,
That make
what
sense?
what I want to say is as soon as we put this on an agenda, and if we put it on a agenda for a work session, this is going to bring people out. So whatever the strategy ends up being or so forth, there are going to be people who attend. And so if we do it at a work session, the people, can they talk? Can they ask questions? Can they do, or are we going to keep this contained all the way through till possibly, the end of February or the 1st of March or something? I don't understand why this has to take so much time to get to it in January when we told them we'd have a community meeting.
We will be getting to it in January, and part of the strategy is to try and figure out the best way that they can have an opportunity to communicate.
Okay.
What we initially promised them was a community conversation. So that's the plan that we're currently developing is, what is our community conversation? What does that look like? Who attends? What's the opportunity? And quite frankly, we need to be able to ensure that we are providing very clear and accurate information about what that ordinance actually says and what it actually does not say, because there's a lot of misinformation that has been circulated, and rightly so. People are concerned about that issue, and we want to make sure that we're putting together as much accurate information as possible, and we, quite frankly, need some time to make sure we're doing that. So we're trying to understand, look at all of the comments that came in, understand what all of the concerns are, so that we are addressing those as proactively as we can as we're developing the community conversation, so that people have an opportunity to communicate. And so I would say, I would anticipate we are going to have multiple opportunities for people to review and comment on this. And it's going to include, it may likely include community conversations. It might likely include council work sessions and council meetings, all of which we would make sure that we're giving ample opportunity for appropriate and at the appropriate time for public input.
So
Could I ask a
normally,
clarifying question?
Okay, I'll get to you in a minute here. Go ahead, Leetta.
Thank you, Mayor. I thought, so when you're talking about timing, I appreciate this conversation, right? I thought, isn't Martin v. Boise, the Ninth Circuit decision, isn't that on appeal? So isn't whatever we do, shouldn't we wait for the appeal process? Because everything could change, right? I'm confused.
That's part of the discussion.
Okay,
That's part of
perfect.
the discussion.
Got it. Thank you.
That is a perfect example of some of the information that we are trying to evaluate from a technical and professional and, as you pointed out, legal perspective.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
so normally, haven't had Leetta brought that up. I think working for the state, working in an adversarial program where we get sued all the time, we have public hearing all across the state. So we had, I don't know where public hearing for the park down the street. So maybe having the public hearings to collect their input, at least you will have heard what they have to say, and then bring that to our deliberation for us to actually have a full picture when, according to Leetta, hopefully there will have been an adjournment for that case, and then we will know what to do. Because regardless of what happened in that case, whether it's a yea or nay, I don't know if we can go ahead and do this on our own without having a public hearing for the citizens to come there and at least give them 3 or 4 minutes so that let them have their say.
Right.
And then we'll call it a day.
Well, that's what we're trying to determine is what that community engagement is. Is it a public hearing? Is it an open house? What is it? So we're still working on that. That will be the conversation in January. Anything else? All right. So with that, I'm going to adjourn our work session and allow the Planning Commission to get on to their business, and wish everyone a great holiday, and thank you for attending. And I don't know if you guys have to do some technical things to change to the Planning Commission. I'm sure you do, so. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was really